everyone. Welcome to Being Patient Perspectives. I'm Deborah Kahn, founder of Being Patient. As many of you know, this segment is to really interview people who have been diagnosed with dementia to gain in their first-person perspective. So today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Mark Sennet. Mark was a photojournalist. He was a photographer, photographing many celebrities in Los Angeles for many well-notable magazines, and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And with Mark is also his wife, Pam, who joins us today. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for
our pleasure.
us.
So, Mark, let's just first start with how you got your diagnosis. Tell us a little bit about, what were some of those early signs and what led you to seek more, investigation?
Well, Pam and my daughter in Los Angeles noticed that I was, forgetting my keys, my wallet, where the car was, and I didn't notice it. And we moved, from LA to here, and about 2 weeks before my daughter's wedding in LA, I had a grand mal seizure, and I'm not sure what mall I was going to, but it wasn't Gillard. So they took me to the hospital, and when I came out of ICU, wherever I came out of, I really didn't, they told me, they didn't tell me exactly that I had Alzheimer's or any other thing. And my main concern was getting to my daughter's wedding. And so I was able to do that and fly there. And at the same time, my sisters and everybody was there told me I wasn't doing well. And I thought I was doing okay. But yeah, it was an interesting transition for me when I got home to here, because we moved, from LA to Atlanta to be with our daughter. I went to see some neurologists at Emory, and they were discussing my diagnosis, which positively came up to Alzheimer's. Now, from my point of view, I didn't really realize what I had. And once I was told, confirmed that I had Alzheimer's, from my point of view, I wasn't sick. I felt pretty much the same, but I was having problems with balance, with shuffling with my feet. I fell a few times. And again, I didn't realize I had Alzheimer's. I wasn't really in denial, but I couldn't accept it because I felt pretty much the same. But as time went on, I went to PT classes for about a year, and they suggested that I go to the gym and they walk, do a lot of walking, watch my diet, and all those things, which I did, and I started to get better, with not shuffling and walking, and feeling fairly normal. So then my daughter and Pam suggested, because my daughter knew the person who was running the Atlanta version, and they suggested that I should go, try doing a photography book, a coffee table book on all the people that I had photographed. So I thought about that, and I thought, well, this would be great. But it was in two parts. It was my early life as a photojournalist, and then I would start the second part of the book, which we've done, not finished it, but we've been working on kind of the important people in Atlanta that have been, had the same sort of, situation. And we photographed some really cool people. And now what I'm working on is outside of Atlanta and going to Washington, D.C., where I have a lot of connections, and back to Los Angeles, where I have, which is important because I want some of the celebrities that I had photographed through the years to be in the second part of the book, so that there was a relationship between when I was well and here I am today with Alzheimer's. And I feel it's important to get everybody involved because there's such a stigma on Alzheimer's. And I feel that through my career, I would be able to, introduce, the whole world to my situation.
A
So
hundred.
that's,
Right. And I appreciate, I want to talk more about the book because there's a lot of, and actually, we'll show some of the photos in a moment.
Mhm.
But first, I want to talk to Pam too, because one of the things
Sure.
that you said that stands out, and we hear this often, is like, in my mind, I didn't think anything was wrong. It was
Mhm.
my wife, my daughter.
Mhm.
Yes,
Tell us a little bit about what
sure,
you were noticing at
sure,
home with Mark as somebody
sure.
who sees him every day.
Yeah. I think really since 2016, my daughter and I noticed changes. Mark
Just
was
to add, Mark wasn't diagnosed till 2022, right?
22, right?
Okay, so that
So
far
quite a
back.
while, quite a
Yeah.
while. Mark was suffering from depression, and I think that was a real precursor to what was happening when we finally got the diagnosis. And he was on different medications for depression, and so we were thinking maybe some of the forgetfulness, losing his phone, his keys, was perhaps due to the medications he was on. Not being able to understand a phone bill, certain things. He was under the care of a psychiatrist for depression, so he was having, care, but that wasn't picked up. The Alzheimer's was never mentioned at the time. So when he did have a grand mal seizure in 2022, and he went to the hospital, they did a slew of tests. That's when we got the diagnosis of Alzheimer's with mixed vascular dementia.
How did they, and I know this sounds like a silly question to ask, but it's relevant because misdiagnosis is so huge and often
Sure.
it takes people a long time. Sometimes it takes people a
Mhm.
few years to get a diagnosis. So what was your experience when you went to the doctors? What type of tests were they giving you? What were they telling you? And how did they conclude that it was indeed Alzheimer's disease?
Well, good question. We had Mark had MRIs,
Mhm.
CAT scans, MRIs, and that is definitely where the vascular dementia was absolutely diagnosed. And then our neurologist said that he felt that because of Mark's symptoms, he was having tremors and there was shuffling, there was a lot happening, that he felt also it was a mixed Alzheimer's um, and vascular dementia. Yeah.
Mark, do
And
you have dementia in your family? Have you had
But
relatives?
we think so. My mother died, not that long ago. And she was suffering from dementia before she passed. And, I never thought she had it before. I mean, she drove me crazy for years, but I didn't think that was dementia. That was just her. But yeah, I didn't notice it. I mean, I just when she was getting really far gone before she died.
about 5 years, and she
Mhm.
was having aphasia and difficulty with her speech, and her doctor gave her the diagnosis of dementia.
Hmm.
So their depression is a huge risk factor, I guess, for dementia. Were you aware of any of those risks? And do you think that there's a relationship at all between the depression and, later the dementia diagnosis?
Well, I didn't feel I was that depressed. I know Pam and my daughter did. So I wasn't really aware of it, and still not aware of it in the sense that I just didn't feel that depressed. There was a lot on my plate that I was trying to navigate,
Yeah.
and I just thought that was work.
And there were a lot of stressors during that time. So
Mhm.
there was a lot of outside factors. But I do feel that the depression was definitely a precursor. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And yeah. And then, so it was, I feel, misdiagnosed.
So tell me a little bit about your career, Mark. I mean, you weren't, I'm assuming you weren't like the paparazzi, right? You weren't like chasing celebrities. It was
No,
more planned, curated shoots that you would do with really, I mean, and I'll show some of your pictures in a moment. I'm just trying to get them up.
well, Deborah, I would never be a paparazzi. I was a Time Life photojournalist for 30 years. And I was responsible. I probably shot 100 covers,
Wow.
for the magazine, and Life magazine wasn't covers so much, but it was the zeitgeist that was going on in the country. And I didn't have to, I would get assigned, to different people, like the Ali shot, which was, I think, one of my best ones. You just got there, and Ali was such an amazing talent, and this was before the Joe Frazier fight. And the dog's name was Frazier. And Ali, I got accepted into like Ali's, not his personal life, but we did a lot of shoots, over the years. And one that I remember, besides this one, was he had Parkinson's. And I did a number of, at his home in LA. And I picked up a lot from him. He was having a lot of problems, just putting things down, picking them up. He couldn't concentrate on everything. And I knew it had nothing to do with me, but where he was in his life. And I photographed him at home, but it took a long time, to get him, not to relax, but just to get him into situations that I wanted to, like eating his breakfast in his mansion, eating cornflakes, and things that he wanted to do with his wife, which wasn't much, but I got him down to his gym, boxing again. And, I wouldn't say he was a pal, but I was always accepted by Muhammad. There's some wonderful photographs that aren't here of him in his Muslim life, at I don't know what you call it, I guess his temples, with a lot of people bending down, with wherever they do that, when they pray to Allah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, not to make a long story short, but he was one of my favorite people I got to photograph when he was well and he was sick.
This is an amazing shot. I'm just going to flip through some of these. Here we have Arnie here.
Yeah, Arnold, this is the first day that Arnold became an American citizen. And I was there that day for Time magazine. And I had one or two other sessions with him, but he's such an amazing personality. And so when I suggested this photograph, he was all for it. And a lot of these celebrities, their lives were bigger than life. And that's Arnold,
Yeah.
So this one is an amazing.
Dudley Moore, is it?
Yeah, I had photographed Dudley a lot when he came to America. And so this was for People magazine at the beach near his house. And I had to convince the editors, because he was about to play at Carnegie Hall. And so I wanted to do something that represented that. So he wouldn't let me take his Steinway piano out to the beach. So I had rented this piano, and I had a lot of assistants with me because we had to get the piano out to the beach. And he was leaving that night, I think, or the next day to go to Carnegie Hall.
What an amazing shot as well.
The dog, Deborah, what happened was it was just him and the piano, and he started playing, and this dog came out. I don't know where he came from. And it was a black and white dog. He's in a black and white tux, and the piano was black and white.
It couldn't have been more perfect.
Yeah. So, they hung this photograph in the Time Life building, I think for about a year. But yeah, I love this picture because sometimes things happen that you're not controlling. And he was very wonderful to photograph. This shot of I think he was, Robin was probably, through the years, I think I did 5 covers on him. This was the first cover, and he was crazy. I mean, he was absolute crazy fun. And this was difficult because I put his legs through a ladder at my studio, and I had, I forgot her name.
Mindy.
Yeah, Mindy push him up, and he was hanging out. And this was the cover, for People magazine. His first cover, I did 5 with him. My last one I did, and you have to remember, he has all of his handlers there, meaning his manager, his publicist, his agent, and they're very careful about what they let him do. And this wasn't the shot. Last time I brought a live duck, to the shoot, and some swords and this and that and a springboard. And we did every single shot. And it was for Good Morning Vietnam. And it was, it was, you ask Robin to do anything and he would do it.
This
And
is an amazing shot, and of course, sadly, Robin Williams. I mean, he ended his life, but he was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, right? And it was like it wasn't known until after he died, which is
exactly
really sad. Yeah, and I'm assuming that's one of the things that, I mean, when I look through, and we'll see more, there's several people who you photograph who had been diagnosed with dementia, right? I mean, I think that, well, not Dolly, of course, but here we go. Ronald Reagan, who had Alzheimer's disease, and it's believed that, he was actually towards the end of his second term, he was showing signs of Alzheimer.
Well,
So tell me a little bit about that. Is part of what the plan is with your book that you're putting together, is it to show us also people, I mean, anyone from a president to an actor can have a dementia diagnosis. It impacts everybody.
well, I'll tell you a quick story. I used to travel with President Reagan, and when he was running for president, and he was sharp, as we all know, and what's the right term I'm trying to think of? He was with it, when he was running for governor, when he was running for president, and he was a cool guy. I mean, he was really, masterful, presidential, and I was in his with his people in his office in LA, and we were doing a movie with him on one of his people that kind of got him to be president. And President Reagan came in because he was going to play golf that day. And we were talking about this other man called Lee Atwater. And Reagan came into the room and forgot who Lee was. And he got himself together where he focused on a photograph of him and Gorbachev. And then 6 months later, he wrote the letter, and I knew it when we were in the room. And then we took our pictures with President Reagan, and we all felt sick, because he couldn't focus, well on that. And it was pretty evident. And this photograph of him and Nancy was before that. And they were a great couple. And I knew Nancy as time went on. We were doing other movies with her because I was a producer at that point. And she was pretty tough, I got to say, but she always, gave me an open door, and her handlers from DC, because President Reagan hadn't died yet. But it was, what an experience to travel with the Reagans and really get to know up close, who they were. There was no Ronald Reagan without Nancy Reagan. And I got to witness that, and up close and personal. And I enjoyed every minute of that, because what a man. And it was interesting though, because I was at HBO then, and we had got Nancy Reagan's rights. I think he had died at that point. And I couldn't find a writer. We all couldn't, because everybody hated Reagan in 2003. And it's not till today that they admire, from a few years ago, what an important president he was.
Yeah. Did you feel at the time, I mean, did you ever have a conversation after the fact with Nancy about the Alzheimer's diagnosis? I mean, I do feel like we've kind of come a long way, because today it doesn't feel like people hit it as much as they did back then. But so tell me a little bit about that. Was she open about it, and did she relay how he was dealing with it?
She didn't. It was more as a couple, and what she was doing to protect him. And we discussed it because I was there when he first, put his letter out. And we had decided, I was at HBO at that point as a producer, and she agreed to do his life story with me and our team. And whoops.
I'm here.
Oh,
I can hear you.
We're not.
I can see you and I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. We may not be able to see the
Okay, I'm
photos.
actually going to stop sharing. So go ahead and continue that story.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Mrs. Reagan would have called Pam on the phone. We were living in the desert, and she would get on the phone and say, "Where's Mark?" You know, because she was very demanding and wanted to make sure that the Alzheimer's disease was dealt in the right way, because she didn't have approval on the script, but she kind of did. And when we got into the Alzheimer's, she was very concerned how we would handle that, because she was so protective of her husband. And that part of his life, was the downfall of him. And, but she was, what's the right word to say? She was very happy that President Reagan wrote that letter about Alzheimer's when he realized that he was, diagnosed with that. And it was pretty evident to her, to the people around her. And word had leaked out, Deborah, that we were doing this movie, and when I was at HBO, and she got nervous. And because so many of the other broadcast networks were going to try to jump in and stop us. So she decided at the end, because we were dealing a lot with the second part of his life and the first part, because he was such a great man, but she didn't want to make him look like a loser when he got, diagnosed. So that was a very important part in my life, because I didn't realize everything about dementia, Alzheimer's, but she was helpful to me in bringing that forward in the script, if that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, well, first, let me just say, I think disease presents itself in different ways, but it certainly doesn't feel like memory is a big issue for you. I mean, have you noted that you're able to recount all of these? I mean, I know short-term versus long-term can be a different thing, but
that's for one thing. Short-term, is difficult but I can retrieve it, after a minute or two, if we had dinner last week, who we had dinner with, what movie we watched. And sometimes, Pam is so helpful to remind me, what we were doing together. My long-term memory is pretty excellent. I can go all the way back to when I started as a photographer when I was 21 and recount all those stories. And so my long-term memory is pretty good. And the question you just asked me, because my long-term memory and my short-term memory is pretty good, I don't have that every day. And because of my physical working out, and I just graduated from a PT class, all those movements and the book that we're doing keeps your brain working, and it keeps you moving. And I think the one most important thing, the support group that I have from Pam and our daughter, and, it was very helpful for me. I know I have Alzheimer's, but I think from my point of view, I can't kick it, but I can certainly keep it at bay by doing all the things I'm doing, like the coffee table book, which I think is very important to shine a light on Alzheimer's with the career that I've had. And I
100%.
think that, anyway,
Yeah.
that's.
No, I 100%. And Pam, what about from your perspective? Have you noticed changes in Mark in the last few years since he was diagnosed? I mean, certainly does seem like he's doing very well.
He's doing very well, and he's so compliant with all the doctors' recommendations as far as diet and exercise and everything that he's doing to keep active and keep his brain active. But Mark is little forgetful at times, a little difficulty following movies sometimes or TV shows, except for politics. He's right on with the politics.
Well, there's certainly things that are unforgettable with politics.
That's for sure.
Especially this year.
And so, yes, and maybe need some cueing, maybe as far as what we're doing today. And And eating, sometimes Mark doesn't want to eat. So I have to make sure that we have different things that you like that you can pop into the refrigerator and eat. Yeah. So nutrition, we need to keep an eye on that. And so we're just living day by day and staying as positive as we can.
Well, and what's really kind of struck me is, Mark, it seems like you have a very positive attitude on Alzheimer's, and you weren't diagnosed that long ago. I mean, it's only been a couple of years, if that, right?
Right.
So tell me a little bit about that. Like, is that just your natural predisposition? Are you a positive person? Like, usually what we see is people go through a period that's really difficult and then they come out of it, right? I feel like with you, I don't know, you're already working on a book, and it wasn't that long ago. So talk to me about.
Well, Deborah, I mean, for me, it's about moving forward. It's like I know I have Alzheimer's. I don't want to end up. Pam and I went to an Alzheimer meeting a few weeks ago, and it was so sad to see this. I don't know what president he was of some large company, but his wife had to feed him the pizza, and I felt that that's somebody that I should put in the Alzheimer's book, and because I don't know if that makes any sense, but everybody that we photographed for the book at this point is diagnosed like me, or they've had it, for 5 or 10 years, but they're still with it. So yeah, I think I have I'm not pushing it, but I have a very positive attitude that there's things to do to, put the Alzheimer's at bay. And so that for me, because I make more jokes about the Alzheimer's than I do, it's just.
Mark has a great sense of humor.
And humor goes a long way, right? It really.
Oh, it really, really does.
In terms of happiness. And so that's wonderful. Okay, so just before we go, I just want to know, when can we all see the book? What's it called? Give us a little preview, a little teaser.
Well, we haven't come up with a title, and we're still looking for a publisher. I mean, the joke I always make, here today, but not sure about tomorrow. But I'm not sure if that resonates with the publisher. And, the book is pretty interesting in the sense that it covers the Alzheimer's situation, that whoever has Alzheimer's, I think what they'll gain from this book is the awareness of it, and my life, as a photographer, and then my life as a producer. And I think people will come away with this, is that this man has had a pretty incredible life, and now he's got this stigma of Alzheimer's. And I think it's my job to make everybody aware that you're not dead when you get a diagnosis. In fact, you can really move your life forward with this. And you need to do things that are creative. You need to stimulate your brain. You need to have a great partner, like I have with Pam and my daughter. And it's not the end of the world. You're not dying, and you should look at your life, as you had it before. And in fact, getting the celebrities that I used to photograph, or getting very close to Lionel Richie, who I used to do many sessions with him. And we've been in touch with him, and get his perspective on Alzheimer's, and how he feels about it. And then you cut back to Alzheimer patients today. And it's a wonderful journey, and I know it will help other people, but it's also helping me.
That's wonderful.
Which is like, just keep going. I mean, you don't have to shut your brain down because you have this diagnosis. In fact, you should move forward with it.
Amen to that. So thank you so much, Pam and Mark. I really enjoy your story. I'm sincerely looking forward to seeing the book. I know it's going to be amazing, with your career and just your outlook. So thank you for sharing that with us. We will hopefully, maybe you'll pick up a publisher from this interview, but
I hope so.
there's, yeah, I'm sure it will help a lot of people. So thank you to both of you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Deborah.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, and if any of you missed any of this, we'll always post it on beingpatient.com. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. That's where we tell you about interviews such as this one. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.
See you soon.